Sandy Mitchell, and welcome back to another wonderful episode of Nutrition Talk. On today's session, we'll be talking about folic acid, also known as folate or vitamin B9. So come with us as we introduce you to this vitamin. Folate comes from the Latin word folium, which means leaf, because it was first discovered in green leafy vegetables. Now, folic acid and folate are often used interchangeably because they have similar effects and properties. Folate is the natural form of vitamin B9 in food, while folic acid acts as a synthesis form of the same vitamin. We'll now hand over to Vanessa Tomlinson, who will speak to you about folate's effect on the nervous system.
Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of In the Street. Today we'll be finding out from our citizens four physiological functions of folate. Vitamin B9, also known as folic acid. Two will come from the nervous system and two from the cardiovascular system. I am so excited! Let's go!
Well, for me, as a pregnant woman of this country, folate is very important in the nervous system of my child. Folic acid helps the child's brain to develop. It plays a vital role in the mental and emotional development of my child. I don't know much, but I know that when my baby mother is pregnant, they put her on like the vitamin, they put her on vitamin immediately that contains the folate, and they say that this folate or folic acid can help my woman, can help my baby from getting neural defects such as the spina bifida and all them things there. So yeah. So folate is just as important in the cardiovascular system as it is in the nervous system. So I'm going to give you two functions of folate in the cardiovascular system. So one, DNA synthesis. Folate in the body is converted to tetrahydrofolic acid, TH4, which participates in DNA synthesis. TH4 is a precursor of DNA synthesis. The second function of folate in the cardiovascular system is that it helps with red blood cell production and maintenance. So inadequate folate, inadequate red blood cell. Inadequate red blood cell, folate deficiency, anemia.
Thank you for watching. Channel Chores, it's now over to you on Nutrition Talk.
Well, thank you, Vanny. It looks like you had a lot of fun. And thanks for introducing me. As you know, guys, I'm Chanel Trowers, and you must be wondering what fancy foods you'll have to get now just to get a little folic acid. Don't worry, the name sounds fancy, but you find it very common foods that we probably eat every day. I'll be giving you 6 such foods. First one we have is liver. Liver gives you about 212 micrograms of folic acid, which is about 54% of the daily value that we need. Then we have our grains, which includes our beans, or peas, or nuts that we have on a regular basis. This gives about 131 micrograms of folic acid, which is about 33% of the daily value. Next, we have the regular wheat. This is about 78.7 micrograms of folic acid and is equivalent to 20% of the daily value. That is quite a bit. Then we have the leafy greens, which includes our regular callaloo or broccoli. This has about 58.2 micrograms of folic acid, which is about 15% of the daily value. Next, we have our citrus fruits, which includes our regular orange, the lime, the sweet grapefruits that we love so much, especially from the country. Yes, guys, this is about 55 micrograms of folic acid, which is equivalent to 14% of the daily value. If you can't get the citrus fruits though, don't worry. We have the regular papaya, the bananas, and 1 cup of raw papaya gives about 53 micrograms of folic acid, which is 13% of the daily value, and an average size banana is about 23.6 micrograms of folic acid, which is 6% of the daily value. So guys, see, you can run and go ahead now, get as much folic acid as possible, but don't get too much. So now we'll have the recommended dietary allowances for individuals from the 5 stages of development done by Sasha Gay Utah. We now hand over to you, my dear.
Thank you, Chanel Chores. Hi guys, my name is Sasha Gay, and my goal today on Nutrition Talk is to identify folic acids RDAs for each of the 5 life stages. This These 5 life stages are 6 to 12 months, 4 to 8 years, 19 to 30 years, 51 to 70 years, and pregnancy. But before that, I'm sure you're wondering, what is an RDA? RDA means recommended dietary allowance. RDAs are values which describes the average daily intake levels deemed sufficient in meeting 97.5% of the population of persons' nutrition requirements. These persons are said to be healthy, and these RDA values are specific to a given age and whether you are male or female. So, the data for RDA for the different life stages are as follows. For 6 to 12 months, both males and females have an RDA value of 80 micrograms per day, and that is the unit for RDA, micrograms per day. For 4 to 8 years, both male and female require 200 micrograms per day of folic acid. For 19 to 30 years, both male and female require 400 micrograms per day of folic acid. 51 to 70 years, 400 micrograms per day of folic acid. Pregnancy. 14 to 18-year-old pregnant ladies require 600 micrograms per day of folic acid. 19 to 30-year pregnant ladies require 600 micrograms per day. And 31 to 50-year-old pregnant women require 600 micrograms per day of folic acid. I'm sure you have noticed it that recommended dietary allowance values vary across age groups and genders. And I just know you're asking, why? Don't worry, I got you. As men age, their folic acid RDA values increase. That means they require more folic acid in their systems. This is because folic acid functions to assist in the prevention of heart disease as they age. Additionally, pregnant women, for instance, have higher folic acid RDA levels compared to a non-pregnant woman. This is because pregnant women need to provide their fetus with the required levels of folic acid to prevent neural tube defects. So guys, now that you have a better understanding of the RDA values required for folic acid, go ahead, get you some folic acid in your system. Over to you, Shamoon.
Hello, I'll be speaking to you about the factors that prevent the proper absorption of folate. Now, one of these is celiac disease. Now, what happens with celiac disease is that it affects the small intestine and prevents the proper absorption of folate. Now, folate is a vitamin that is needed to make red blood cells. Now, if this vitamin is not there, that would lead to diseases such as anemia because of the body not being able to make hemoglobin. Now, another factor that affects the absorption of folate is excessive drinking of alcohol. With excessive drinking of alcohol, this results in a disease known as the alcohol liver disease. With alcohol liver disease, there is a reduction of the absorption of folate in the small intestine and its storage in the liver. Now, if it is not being absorbed in the small intestine or stored in the liver, that would mean that there is an increase in the excretion of in the urine and intestinal malabsorption. Now we'll be speaking about the factors that increase the absorption of folate. One of these is tritium. Now, tritium is mostly found in water, and when it enters the bloodstream, what happens is that it travels from the upper lumen to the lower lumen. Now, active transport takes place in the duodenum and the jejunum. Then it enters the lumen and increase the amount of folic acid in the lumen. Another factor that increases the need for folate is pregnancy. Now, when there is a growing fetus, it's only natural that you will expect there will be a need for more blood. As we had discussed earlier, folate is needed to make blood. So if there's an increased need for blood, there will be an increased need for folate. Now, take for example countries that where malaria is endemic. There will be an increased need for folate to meet this increased blood demand, so that the mother won't be anemic. Now, without there being an increase of folate in the body, this will result in the child being born underweight, born too early or stillbirth, and also having anemic. Thank you. I'll now hand over to our next speaker, to Tanya West.
Thank you, Dr. Vassal. I'll now be explaining two biochemical/clinical measures that may be used to assess the nutritional adequacy of folic acid. Folic acid in the blood. It is very sensitive to changes in the diet. Like, depending on what you eat, it may be very sensitive, as well as it may be confused by pregnancy or the ingestion of alcohol. Furthermore, some anemias can be detected by the serum folate, as well as the levels of a person's diet can be varied based on the serum folate. The levels of the serum folate may be seen in absence of deficiency. Now for the red blood cell folate. 1. This folate gives an assessment of the tissue folate status over the lifetime of the red blood cell. 2. A red blood cell folate below 340 nanomole per liter is seen as being consistent with clinical folate deficiency. Because this red blood cell folate is not stable, it is for long periods of time, and it needs to be treated with ascorbic acid and frozen before use. And lastly, the test is requested as a follow-up test during a full blood count test. I'll now hand over to Dr. Williams.
Clinical signs and symptoms associated with the deficiency and toxicity of folic acid. Folic acid deficiency. Clinical signs and symptoms associated with folate deficiency are fatigue, gray hair, mouth sore, tongue swelling, and growth problems. Complications of folate deficiency are related to low-level white blood cells and platelets, serious birth defects in the spinal cord and brain of developing fetus. This is known as neural tube defects. Folic acid toxicity. Clinical signs and symptoms related to folic acid toxicities are abdominal cramps, diarrhea, rash, nausea, and sleep disorder.
Yeah, Oasis. Lego. Yeah, Oasis. Lego. Yeah, Oasis. Lego. Yeah, Oasis.